it's 1 minute to noon, and we've had about 8 minutes for members to get involved. I assume are taking action another time.
Well, my intention was to go 15 minutes over, and I thought we'd be able to get through it today. I do know there's some amendments, and if we need to do that, I know another committee's coming in at 12:30. If we are not done by, say, 12:15, 12:20, we will have to do that.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I have I guess a question. Representative Kiffmeyer, you've talked about the U.S. constitutional decision, which was a plurality decision, not a majority decision. And they listed a number of factors that mitigated the Indiana law. And you mentioned the Indiana Supreme Court, but we haven't really talked very much about the Minnesota Constitution. I think that most people would agree that voting is a fundamental right. As we heard the other day, it is the subject of more constitutional amendments than any other right that we have. In the Minnesota Constitution, I pass this out for everyone, is instructive. It's Article 7. The Section 1 says, every person 18 years of age or more who's been a citizen of the United States for 3 months who has resided in the precinct for 30 days shall be entitled to vote in that precinct. Then it goes on to list in Section 1 the people who shall not be entitled or permitted to vote, and that is convicted of treason or a felony, under guardianship, or a person who is insane or not mentally competent. And then Section 3, I think, is even more relevant, because what they did when they wrote the Constitution was to put in the Constitution a faith-based system, as you described it. Section 3 says, the legislature shall provide for a uniform oath or affirmation to be administered at elections, and no person shall be compelled to take any other or different form of oath to entitle him to vote. So we have a system. It says you shall be entitled to vote if you meet the requirements listed in Section 1, unless you're one of these groups of people listed in Section 1. And then the Constitution provides a mechanism for ensuring that only people who are entitled to vote do in fact vote, and that mechanism is an oath. It's the affidavit that you sign under penalty of a felony. And I think that any attempt to put a photo ID requirement to law is stepping beyond the bounds of Article 7, and in fact would open this law to a very real and plausible constitutional challenge under the state constitution. And there has been no precedent whatsoever supporting a photo ID requirement under the state constitution. And it's right that it should be so. How many other fundamental rights do we have that you have to first prove to the government who you are before you can exercise them? We have a First Amendment that guarantees the freedom of religion. We have a First Amendment that guarantees the freedom of speech. And do we have to prove when we go to church that we're a citizen protected by the First Amendment and show an ID to get in? Do we have to do that to go to the public square and spout off whatever kind of wisdom or nonsense that we might have in our minds at the time? We don't have to do that. We don't have to prove to the government who we are in order to exercise a fundamental right. And I don't understand why voting should be treated differently. Voting is not like buying alcohol or buying cigarettes. Voting is not like getting on an airplane or doing any of these other activities. Voting is a right that is guaranteed to an individual person. It is their individual fundamental right. And the concept of placing these additional restrictions goes beyond the Minnesota Constitution, and it really violates I think, the very essence of what a fundamental right is. It's to protect the individual against the majority. No matter how popular a photo ID provision is, the fact that the Constitution protects individuals from that kind of majority action is the very purpose for having those rights in the first place.
Did you want to respond to that, Representative Kiffmeyer?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair and Representative Winkler. I think the real key here is that it is a fundamental right, but even in the Constitution, it gives qualifications, and it also gives to the legislature to do the uniform oath. And it does not state the oath in the Constitution. It gives it to the legislature to do that. So that would just be my own comment.